Hello, America. We're back on Radio Free Market with Jeffrey Tucker talking about planned poverty, the gift, the wonderful gift of government intervention. We're going to talk about plumbing. I bet you didn't think that the government could screw up toilets, but guess what? They have. So, I always wondered why the toilet gets clogged up so often. It just didn't really make sense to me intuitively, even before I read your book and started reading about economics. But just when I was little, I wondered why, I can fly across the darn country. I can, I can have all these all this insane technology. I can watch TV and all these things, but the toilet gets clogged up. For God's sake, I'm talking to you from all the way across the country, but I can't have a working toilet. So please explain to us why toilets stink, pun intended.
Okay, there's so many aspects to this, and it's tremendously fascinating and evil. But it all began back in the early 70s when it became very fashionable among a certain set to put a brick in your toilet. You probably don't remember this, but it was the left wing said, "Oh, you got to put a brick in your toilet. Why? To save water. Okay, fine, whatever. Put a brick in your toilet if you want to. Okay." Toilets were 3 and 5 gallons in those days. The brick in your toilet thing slowly caught on. Sure enough, it was regulated. And I forget, I've got the dates in the book. I can't remember exactly when this happened. Maybe it was in the 1980s. But Congress probably inadvertently voted for a regulation that forcibly reduced toilet tank size down to 1.6 gallons, which turns out to be enough to flush some things, but not all things. And so, it became a major problem, and almost all toilets had to be redesigned, and the private manufacturers got after it, trying to reshape them to use 1.6 gallons with varying degrees of success. But ultimately, what we all ended up doing is plunging all the time. And so it's very common now that you see plungers next to toilets, which
is
not
gross and unsanitary.
Yeah. It was not common when I was young. You never saw a plunger. I mean, we plunge a toilet once in your life or something. It was crazy. But now you got to plunge all the time because the darn things don't work, and you have to pay for the expense of replacing these toilets with better toilets. But even then, even the best of the modern toilets do not work as well as the worst of the old toilets. And this is for another key reason. While sometimes you can design them to get stuff down, you cannot design them to clean themselves well with 1.6 gallons. Now, this is an interesting thing because you have far less water running through the toilet. This has other effects. So the toilet gets dirty unless it's cleaned pretty much constantly. So you've got to kind of keep a brush in the bathroom too, which is why you go to Walmart and see a whole row full of brushes for the toilets, because you've got to have one in every bathroom. But listen, let's say you're going to be out for a week, and you're not going to be able to clean your toilet. So you've got to have some kind of chemical to go into the toilet tank that's going to keep it clean. And that's why at CVS and Walmart and Kroger you find all these little cubes of bleach that you can throw into the tank. Well, that helps keep the thing clean, but the problem is it breaks down the stopper that stops the rubber stopper that keeps the thing plugged up, and it makes it more porous, which causes it to leak. And then you hear that little sort of dripping sound, and it annoys you. What's that sound? What's that sound? Oh, it's the toilet running. I got to replace the stopper. Well, when I was young, you never had to replace the stopper. Stopper was for life. You had a stopper in your toilet, it lasted for life. Now you got to replace them, every few months or something like that. But it gets worse because there's not enough water flowing through the tank. Mineral deposits have developed around all the inside workings of the thing, and they begin to clog up. So you have to replace them. And if you're going to replace them all the time, then they might as well not be made out of steel. They'll be made out of plastic. So, all these companies have made $1 gazillion innovating new plastic insides of toilets, and they have to be replaced every few months. So every household now has to have some sort of master of the toilet, the toilet technician. Oh, we got a problem with the toilet? No problem. Come and call me. And so you have to get down there with screwdrivers. It's unbelievably unsanitary to have to change these things out. And we all change our toilet, the insides of our toilet tanks all the time now, whereas 30 years ago, nobody ever did that. That was the unapproachable area. That was like, you would never lift the top off the toilet tank because it's disgusting in there. You don't even want to know what's in there. Now we all know all too well, and it's a consequence of government regulation.
Not only is it just, it's just kind of unsanitary, and it's just kind of gross. I mean, I like to think we live in a society where you buy a toy, you don't worry about it. It's a part of your life you don't really want to have to to concentrate on very often, right?
Right.
But and also on the economic level, look at all the resources that are wasted to correct all the problems that you cited because of a law that just says smaller tank.
That's
Boom.
it.
All of a sudden all the toilet companies have to buy up resources to make all these new tanks and all these chemicals. That's insane.
The black markets for large toilet tanks. A few years ago there was actually a shooting war on the Canada-U.S. border over large toilet tanks, and now you can't even get the darn things. Yeah, there's actually. Wow. And I'm sorry for going on about this topic, but it actually is a very, very important topic. I mean, it seems kind of silly. It's very important. If you go to San Francisco today, you will notice a stink in the air, and that stink is sewage. The reason that the place stinks is because there's not enough water flowing through the sewage system to clean it out, and the place is clogging up. So that's why there's a stink. City planners, not knowing what to do about it, have decided that the best way to deal with this is the same way we deal with this at home, with a little bit of bleach, except that in the case of San Francisco, you got to use a lot of bleach, which means like tankers and tankers and tankers of bleach pouring through the sewage system. This is what they're planning to do. What the consequences are going to be on the groundwater, I guess we'll know in 5 or 10 years, but it could be very, very dangerous.
When everyone in San Francisco is white from the inside out.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is unbelievably dangerous. So you see what I mean when I talk about government unraveling civilization. I really mean it. I mean, they're taking away from us,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Bugs. I like the bed bugs example is cool, and you wrote, for our human history, one of our biggest enemies, so to speak, has been bugs. Malaria and the Black Plague, however that was spread in reality. If you didn't think government intervention could cause bed bugs, folks, it does, and it can be attributed to the government banning of DDT, you say, which has been widely smeared, but has saved hundreds of millions of lives from malaria. Can you tell us how the banning of DDT has not only caused the return of malaria, but also a bed bug epidemic?
Yeah. Well, they stopped spraying because of a book called Silent Spring, which is just a big pack of lies from the beginning to the end. And bed bugs were just about wiped out from the face of the earth. They stopped spraying the DDT. They've gradually fought their way back. And now some people say that DDT doesn't even work against them, which may be true. The point is that the process of innovating chemicals that kill these evil, evil pests has been interrupted and stopped because of all the regulations over the process of chemical ingenuity and marketing. So now we pretty much don't have anything to kill bed bugs with. I mean, some people say DDT doesn't work anymore on them. I would like to know that for sure. I would like to try them. The bed bugs are ghastly. We're talking right now in March, so it's rather cold outside in most places of the country. So the bed bugs don't come out when it's cold. They go into hibernation. But come middle of spring and early summer and then late summer, and I can promise you this whole scandal is going to come roaring back more fiercely than ever. Last year, CNN's offices and Google's headquarters were both infested by bed bugs, and there was infestations all over the country. There was no town excepted. Some places were worse than others, and we're not talking about like flies or even roaches. We're talking about things that eat you up as you sleep, and you talk about being creeped out. I mean, if you can't sleep, you can't have a normal life. And if you lie in bed thinking that the second you close your eyes and go into an absolute stillness, the bed bugs will come crawling out of the mattress and start chewing on your flesh, it's hard to go to sleep.
And I was telling you a little bit over the break, and this is absolutely a true story, no exaggeration. My cousin and my sister had an apartment in New York so badly infested with bed bugs that they had to move out 4 or 5 times, had it fumigated, or whatever they had done. It's so bad that she had to sell her place. So, and you wrote, that the EPA encourages education, and the New York Times headlined the story saying that the return of bed bugs has baffled scientists, and they're just stunned, and they have no idea. And you wrote, I believe correctly, that there isn't much reason to be baffled when we have the tools, but the government prevents them from using them. And even if DDT is no longer effective, the process of innovation would be able to come up with a chemical that probably works. If these companies had enough profit, they could probably make up something that's incredibly safe. You eat and it wouldn't hurt you.
No, that's right. But nowadays, even the hardware stores carrying fewer and fewer products that work to kill bugs. I mean, you can't even buy the one product I ever found to control bugs in my backyard. I can't even find anymore at hardware stores because they don't. They're afraid to carry them because they get harassed by regulators. So I had to order mine through some surreptitious, means with some fly-by-night company, whatever, that produces them and repackages them in bottles with different names. This is life in America today. Can you believe it? The U.S. of A. And and speaking of chemical products, you know that you can't buy at Home Depot anymore effective drain opening chemicals. Lye is now banned for sale.
What is
lye? And any product with lye because of the drug war or whatever kind of crazy excuse they give. So you can't unclog your drains anymore. That's just FYI. So, I mean, the consequences of all this are just gruesome. I mean, we're going to be soon living in houses with tepid water that breeds diseases, with toilets that are filthy, with beds that are filled with tiny bugs that eat your flesh, and drains that are so clogged with hair that they're spreading all kind of viruses all over the house. This is the future. This is the future that government regulators are giving us. And I compare that with the glory that capitalism, the glorious civilization that capitalism created. It's a remarkable thing. It's like capitalism provides the progress, it provides the advances, it provides better lives, and then government comes along and just reverses the whole process and tries to get us to be ever more poor. And that's what I mean. That's the thesis of the book, and that's what I mean by government unraveling civilization. It's serious stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you said a couple of times during the course of this interview about tepid water, so I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that. You said that you wrote that the government suggested that citizens cure the problem of bed bugs, which they created, by washing sheets in hot water. And you wrote that's all well and good, but the government's outlawed hot water by shipping water heaters with a default setting that makes the water lukewarm.
Yeah, the default setting that they're usually shipped with is 110, in some places 120. And for now, you can find older hot water heaters where you can crank it up yourself, but you have to open up the side and unscrew the deal, and then get a screwdriver in there and turn it. And if you're like me, I feel like the water heater is just not something I should be fiddling with. We have visions of exploding heaters or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to know anything about
hot water.
Right, but you have to in order to get your water hot, because if you're not using hot water, your stuff isn't getting clean. And 110, I'm sorry, that is E. coli water. That is not hot water.
that's like jacuzzi water. That's like that's for us. We can survive in that. I mean, I'm sure the bacteria are fine.
Yeah. The bugs and bacteria and viruses and evil things just thrive at 110. We don't know what the consequences of this are going to be. I think it's very scary. The effects of these government regulations are always more profound and much more serious than the regulators ever imagine. And I'm getting very concerned that the combination of all of these things are going to be breeding diseases and terrible misery in the future, and then there's not going to be any going back. But what's shocking to me is that even in the case of like bed bugs, when you can easily demonstrate that the thing was that the epidemic of bed bugs was a result of government regulations, no bureaucrats ever consider going backwards. They don't unravel what they did in the past. They just keep kind of hitting harder.
Mm-hmm. And you said that in the future, the combination of all these things might cause some pretty undesirable consequences. But what's going to happen? There's a book for our listeners called Crisis in Leviathan by Robert Higgs, and it's not about bed bugs, but it's about the fact that when there's this kind of not really well-defined desire for the government just to fix something, just fix it. Things are so so bad, just do something. And so the government regulations that cause the problem in the first place, because there's going to be this kind of ill-defined public outcry for the government just to do something, and they can't really solve anything. But they're going to go, they're going to go in and maybe nuke the bed bugs. I'm exaggerating, but they're going to do something crazy. That's probably not going to work. They're going to make us stop eating, lemons because lemons give off a scent that attracts bed bugs. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there was some proposed solution last year, and I'm trying to think what that is. I believe there was a congressional legislation to create. Yeah, it was a new program. It's coming back to me now. It was a new program that would be funded with millions and millions of dollars that would create. That's what it was. Inspection agencies that would inspect the apartments to make sure that they don't have bed bugs before they can go on the market. Homes have to be inspected for beds, but by congressional mandate. So you talk about making a bad situation worse. Send in the bureaucrats to inspect. And what are they going to be inspecting for? I mean, it's the problem that was caused by bureaucrats in the first place. And now they're going to enforce. I don't know if they're just going to wish it away through some sort of government regulation. Anyway, that was a bill that was introduced into Congress last year, and I'm sure it's going to come back again. So we could have bed bug inspections in the near future.
Fantastic. And recycling, plumbing, light bulbs, these all seem like kind of trivial inconveniences that we can deal with, although they're obviously tyrannical and unnecessary inconveniences. But one of your last examples is about medicine, and you wrote about how, for example, pseudoephedrine, which is Sudafed, can no longer be purchased from the drugstore because the government outlawed it. And this is just insane. I mean, pseudoephedrine, as he wrote, the godsend for sinus trouble.
Yeah. And, the implications of this are quite profound, too, because the street price of pseudoephedrine is now something like 10 times what the retail price is, if you can get it. Many people, by the way, have gotten embroiled in the court system. Some have gone to jail just because they bought too much pseudoephedrine to unclog their nose because they've been technically in violation of law, although it's very difficult to know even how much you can buy. You can't buy enough to meet the standards on the package of how much you should be taking, and some people just have to have Sudafed. But in any case, the results of this big difference between the retail price and the street price is that many, many, many people are being recruited into the armies of people who are buying the stuff to make things like methamphetamine, which the government basically advertised. But in banning pseudoephedrine, they advertised to everybody in the world, if you want to make money, get some pseudoephedrine and turn it into methamphetamine and sell it on the street. I mean, it's like drug promotion, not drug war. So now you've got regular people.
That's such a great point. I hate to interrupt you. We're coming close to the end of this segment, but we're going to come back and talk about the government promotion for methamphetamine, which is we're talking about with Jeffrey Tucker. Please stay with us on Radio Free Market. Hello, America. We're back on Radio Free Market. Jeff, I'm going to let you finish that point on how the outlawing of pseudoephedrine has just completely expanded the methamphetamine trade.
Yes. So it used to be the making and selling of methamphetamine was limited to a small sector of society, but since putting it behind the counter and requiring driver's licenses and rationing how much you can buy, now the meth dealers have every incentive to recruit people to go to their local Walgreens or CVS and buy their monthly allotment and resell it at 10 times the price to the dealer, which gives the average person a chance to make a quick few $100, which is a great thing. But what's remarkable about this is that it therefore expanded the numbers of people who are involved in the sector of methamphetamine making and dealing. So you've got ever more people now embroiled in the world of drug making and drug abuse than ever before. And we should also remember that methamphetamine came about only because of the war on safer drug than methamphetamine. But the crackdown on that made it ever more difficult to get, and so people turned to methamphetamine. And cocaine itself came about because of the war on opium, and so on it goes. And the war on methamphetamine has already given rise to even tougher drugs. I mean, wicked things called bath salts, which are created purely in the laboratory and are being imported from the UK. And these things are just dreadful. Like one or two hits of them, and you're screwed up for life. So,
wow.
and why it is that some percentage of the population wants to take these things, beyond me. I don't know, but apparently it's a universal feature of human life. And I think from the point of view of humanitarianism and compassion, it's far better that safer drugs be available than ones that fry your brain after 2 uses. And that's what the war on drugs is driving us to. But let me just go back to the pseudoephedrine point. It's just stupid. I mean, the pseudoephedrine is a wonderful drug for unclogging your nose. Some people really depend on it, and the war on pseudoephedrine has had a lot of innocent casualties, and once again denied us a decent medication. And it's only the beginning of the government regulations on medication. NyQuil doesn't work like it used to work. You can't even get children's medicine over the counter at all anymore. To get codeine cough syrup is
codeine's a big one.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get
drug.
it. And you go to the doctor, you can go on your knees and beg and pay egregious fees just to see him, and then he prescribes you, a couple tablespoons and gives you a warning,
Yeah. Yeah, here, take this, go, get out of here. And unfortunately, this last segment's really short. We have about 1 minute 40 seconds, so I'm just going to skip to our last point. And you ended with a quote by Joseph Schumpeter, and I'll give you about a minute to respond before we have to get out of here. But he said the great tragedy of capitalism is that it produces riches so abundant that people tend to take them for granted, imagining they can hobble and destroy its productive machinery without great economic and social consequences. So please just give us your take on that quote.
Yeah, I couldn't really add to that. I mean, it's one of the terrible tragedies of human nature, or something that everybody just takes our material blessings for granted. And the goal of economic education is to get people to be sort of enlightened. These things are not given to us by nature. The world in which we live is man-made, but men and women have to be free to make it, and that's the essence of the capitalist claim, and that's why it needs to be defended.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a great interview, and I encourage our listeners to go back and use your economic knowledge and see how the various government regulations actually cause these things to come about with reference to shortages and things like that. So thank you, Jeffrey Tucker, Sir Lord Privy Jeffrey Tucker, for being with us today. This is Aaron Brown at Radio Free Market. Please visit us on the web at radiofreemarket.com, where you can subscribe for free to all of our shows on iTunes, or visit our Radio Free Market archives for easy downloads. And until next week, wherever you are, please stand up for freedom. Thank you for listening.